Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Tuesday evening. Your boy Nicky Stees is here. And now, you know what time it is. It's time for us to talk about week 14 of the 2024-25 NFL season. And this time around, we're going to talk a little more in depth about the winners and losers and what we took away the most from it. So with that being said, guys, let's get this show started.
Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagles and Sixers YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky Stees! Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keep the sticks real. I'm simply statue, think they slate, dropping unrealistic mags. 2K takes for the clip. Even though cats like that get views closer to the milli, never hear me preach, LeBron to Philly. Before you watch the Eagles all the way through the early 22, authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keep things real. The 24/7, 365 way. Sports content for the reals to fill the day.
Yes, folks, that's right. Week 14 of the 2024 NFL season's in the book, and it is the holiday season, which hence the necklace. But now we're going to get into it. So we got a lot to talk about, folks. So let's not waste any time. Let's dive into it. We start off the weekend on a great note with a thriller on Thursday night. The Detroit Lions defeating the Green Bay Packers by a score of 34-31. I did a reaction to it with Tom Grossi's Lions and Packers fans reaction video on Friday, but man, as far as the game itself goes, let's talk about it. It was a nice game back there. Lions, they continue to roll, even with their defense being banged up. No Aiden Hutchinson, meaning the main piece gone, as well as many other pieces gone. The Lions offense just continued to roll and dominate this. Like there was nothing to it. I mean, all season long, it's been the Detroit Lions show on offense, and they've been the ones that have helped them win these games. And now we're at the point after week 14, 13 games in, Lions have 417 points, which is the most scored by any team thus far in the NFL throughout the entire season. Now, that's an impressive statistic right there. 417 points by the Detroit Lions offense. And it's not just their offense that's rolling too, guy. I mean, their offense is rolling, but hey, they like good position possibly to get home field advantage. And you look at, you've had Jared Goff been solid all year. You got David Montgomery and Jamar Gibbs that both put up solid numbers in the ground game. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown. In the whole offense, you're just loaded with weapons on that offense where, hey, if it's someone, you got players on defense injured, guess what? You still got the offense can help you out. And that's what happened with the Lions on Thursday. We saw just how important the offense really was. And it serves as a fresh reminder that in today's era, offense is the most important tool you can have to help win championships. Let me repeat that. In today's NFL, offense is the most important tool you can have to win games because the Detroit Lions have dealt with serious injuries all the defensive side all season long. A lot of their key players on defense are missing. However, they continue to win games because their offense knows how to score points. The Detroit Lions are the perfect embodiment of the fact that offense wins games in today's era. With all those weapons you have in the run game, Montgomery, Gibbs, passing game, Jamison, Laporta, St. Brown. You can even add Tim Patrick even from time to time. They have weapons on offense, and that's winning them games. And it came through. It was crucial to them Thursday night against the Packers. So we got to give props to that Detroit Lions offense for helping them out. And now for the Packers, even though they were defeated, they still kind of obtained somewhat of a moral victory. And the reason why, despite the losses, they put up a good performance on offense. You had Josh Jacobs had 3 touchdowns in this matchup. And we still got to take that, can take away from it. You say, okay, even though the Packers lost, Josh Jacobs has been a difference maker for them this season. You see with Josh Jacobs, he's clearly a better all-around running back than Aaron Jones, who was still a good back. Don't get me wrong, a good running back, but a serviceable back. But when you compare Aaron Jones to what Josh Jacobs has been doing, Josh Jacobs has been the key factor for this offense compared to last season. Josh, he had 3 touchdowns here. He had an excellent game on Thanksgiving. All throughout the season, he's been a key component to this Packers offense. And now you see this year, they're in much stronger position. It also helps that Jordan Love now has that full season as a starter out the way. When he is healthy, you're seeing a more poised Jordan Love. While he's not perfect, he is still a key. He's certainly improved from last year. He's matured more as a player with experience. Now that he's actually gotten on the field, he's gotten some playing time. You can see that difference for Jordan there as well. But Josh Jacobs, and to give credit where credit's due, this year, hey, he's had 4.4 yards per carry, which is an improvement from last season. With the Raiders, for the 13 games he plays behind a better team, he's also got 11 rushing touchdowns on the season. So he's played a key component in this Packers offense and them scoring points. And he did it again Thursday. Without Josh Jacobs, this might have been a bit a greater score margin win for the Lions. It might not have been a close competitive matchup. So even though the Packers lost, Jacobs deserves credit because he helped keep them in the game. Now, Jordan Love himself, too, he deserves props for this turnaround for the Packers because he's stepped up. Like I said, he's played better when he's on the field, even though he's missed a few games. So he doesn't have the same statistical numbers as last year because he's played less games. However, when he has played, he's had his shaky moments. He's had his Brett Favre-ish type throws where he throws reckless interceptions. We've seen that at times, but we've also seen a more poised Jordan Love who has more chemistry with his guys, such as Christian Watson, who's been a key component of that offense all season. And Wicks, these guys, you see a much more poised Jordan Love. So the Packers, too, despite losing, they put up a good performance. And to me, I feel like they're winners because they showed, even in defeat, they showed they could make some noise come playoff time. They went toe-to-toe with the Detroit Lions. Granted, it was the Detroit Lions team missing a lot of pieces on defense, but they went toe-to-toe with this team and had a competitive game and made the Detroit Lions earn their victory at home. I feel like this is a Packers team that could go on the road, maybe as the most likely the 6th seed, but they could go on the road, possibly win a few games here. If they have to go most likely against the way things are looking right now, it's looking like it's going to be the Seahawks, the 3 seed, the winner of the AFC South, most likely the Bucs, the 4 seed. You could be talking about a Packers team going on the road, possibly defeating Seattle in Seattle. There's a possibility that they could win that, maybe even in the divisional round, get an upset, or give the team they play in the divisional round, most likely at this point would either be the Eagles or the Lions, a run for their money. So I think this Packers team right now is looking like they're in good position to make some noise come playoff time, at least win a game, maybe 2. And then with the future, with Jordan Love having another year experience under his belt, if he can step up his game even further next year, they could be contenders in the future. But with that being said, though, hey, that NFC North is a loaded division, man. This was a great game, though, between the top teams in the NFC. It was an excellent game for a Thursday night game. Real thrilling to watch. I mean, this is what you need if you're going to do streaming for Thursday night games. You need these type of great games that will at least make people want to watch on Prime and want to stream them. So it was good for Prime that they got this, and good for the NFL. Because if you're going to go into streaming services, man, you need these type of games to get people to want to tune into them. And speaking of the NFC North, we got the third wheel in this division that could possibly be in contention are the Minnesota Vikings. Now I got to ask the question, are the Vikings contenders or are they overrated? And the reason I want to ask you guys this question is because with the Vikings, you're dealing with two things. You're dealing with a team that's won 11 games, that on record, on paper, has an excellent season thus far. But you're also seeing a Vikings team that at times has shown weak points, even in victory, even in games where they've won against teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars. They only won by a score of 12-6. Even in victory against the Colts, who are a competitive team, they struggled in the first half. Against the Cardinals last week, they had to rally and come back to win. Now, they're still winning games, and they deserve props for it, but they've had their weak points as well throughout the season. But then on Sunday against the Atlanta Falcons, to break that down real quick, they dominated and won by a score of 42-21. And this offense was in sync. Sam Darnold had himself a field day. Check this out. 22 for 28, 5 touchdowns. That's right. Sam Darnold threw 5 touchdowns. And look, Jordan Addison, 8 receptions, 133 yards, 3 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson had himself 7 for 132 and 2 touchdowns. Jefferson, Addison, they were the two. I mean, they got a strong case for Offensive Player of the Week. Don't get to see surprised if Jordan Addison wins Offensive Player in the Week, because I can easily see that being the case, especially with the Eagles having a sluggish week. And even with the Lions and Packers, with it being a game where, with it being a close game, I think people are going to look at Jordan Addison's numbers and say, okay, he's worthy of being. Oh, sorry about that. There we go. We got to share with you guys now. Let's get Jordan Addison right here. 8 receptions, 133 yards, 3 touchdowns, 7, 132, 2 touchdowns. And that's going to be a tough one between, I think it's going to probably edge. I mean, they might give it to Justin Jefferson because he's got the bigger name, but they could lean to Addison because he has statistically better day. But man, and then Darnold, like I said, 5 touchdowns. Well, you could just name the Minnesota Vikings offense the NFC Offensive Player of the Week and cheat on that one the way they're playing. You got Arcus up by Vikings are a solid team. Oh, yeah, they definitely. Vikings, they showed themselves against the Falcons team that on paper supposedly has an excellent defense with, like, you see some of the names on paper, Jesse Bates, Justin Simmons, Matthew Judon, Grady Jarrett. We thought this Falcons defense was going to be elite going into the season, but the Vikings trashed and torched that defense. But I still got to ask the question, you guys, do you think the Vikings are contenders or do you think they're somewhat overrated in regards to they're likely to be a playoff elimination waiting to happen? What do you guys think? That's the question I want to ask for the chat. Feel free to drop your take in the chat. Let me know what you think about it. Because on paper, it looks like the Vikings are contenders. The big obstacle standing in their way come playoff time is you looking at possible matchups with the Detroit Lions and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, if you're looking at the wild card round, you're looking at likely the Packers and Vikings winning their matchups on the road, depending on which seed they rank. Because you're thinking most likely whoever gets the 6th seed would play the Seahawks and probably win that matchup. And the 5 seed would play the winner of the NFC South and probably win that matchup between the Vikings and the Packers. So the Vikings should on paper at least have a shot to go to the divisional round. But I think a big telling factor will be for the Vikings, because the Vikings still ahead on their schedule. They got to play the Packers and the Lions. How the Vikings fare in those matchups, performance-wise, win or lose, will be the determining factor to me on whether they're contenders or whether they're a bit overrated. So I'm going to wait to see how the Vikings fare in those matchups. I mean, they did a solid job against the Atlanta Falcons. So I feel like in order to prove how do they perform, do they possibly win one or two of those games against the Packers and Lions? Do they perform well in both games, win or lose? Those are going to be the deciding factors for me on whether or not the Minnesota Vikings are contenders. So I'm going to wait that one out. But if you guys want to comment in the chat, feel free to do so. Let me know your take. As far as while we're still talking about the NFC, we're switched divisions to the NFC West. The Seahawks now, well, they bled the NFC West, but now after defeating the Arizona Cardinals and getting the regular season sweep, they officially have cemented their case in that division. Because they officially now, they at 7-5 now. Is it? They should be, yeah. And they've swept the Cardinals, who were the big threat to their division. And the Seahawks, I gotta admit, they're looking like a really good team right now. Or 8-5 it is. Yeah, 8-5. They've been on the momentum. I mean, they started off the season a little hot. Then they kind of hit a bit of a rust spree in the middle, but they've gotten it together. They've been winning their games. Now, granted, people will point to the fact they've beaten teams such as the Cardinals and the Jets. And yes, that is true, but they're still an 8-win team. 8-5 as we're getting closer to the middle of the month of December. That's putting you in good position to win your division, which the Seahawks haven't done since 2020. This is excellent wave of momentum for the Seahawks, but there's also some looking at the Seahawks in this game. They got a pretty good defense too. I got to give them props. They got 2 takeaways in this one. You got Ernest Jones, who they traded for at the trade deadline, came in, had himself an interception, and another player who stepped up is a cornerback, a third-year cornerback by the name of Coby, spelled C-O-B-Y Bryant. And I'm looking at his numbers. He's not an elite cornerback at all. He's not like a great player, but when you look at his numbers, he's been a solid defensive back for the Seahawks. And I want to talk about that real quick because I feel like in part he's being slept on because number one, he's got the burden of having the same name of an all-time great from a different sport. Because that's going to stick out because the first thing that's going to come to people's mind when you say the name Kobe Bryant is obviously the late NBA legend Kobe Bryant, not the defensive back for the Seattle Seahawks. And we got Ryan Philin coming in, answering the question. He believes the Vikings are contenders. Thanks for answering my question, sharing your take. Now, we're going to scale down a second. So we're talking about Kobe Bryant from the NFL. Now, like I said, he's going to have the burden of having the same name of an all-time great from a different sport in terms of getting recognition. But let's take a look. So his rookie year, he played all 17 games. He had 70 tackles. He got 2 sacks, 4 forced fumbles. Now, he had 4 pass deflections. And then this year, he's only had 48 tackles. He hasn't had a sack. He's only had 1 forced fumble. But here's the big jump. He's had 3 interceptions. And he's had 5 pass deflections. That's where the big jump comes in his game. So he's not the flashiest player in the world, but he has been a key component to this defense. And he won NFC Defensive Player of the Week as well. So I think when you talk about some of the better young players in the NFL on the defensive side of the ball, particularly secondary players, you got to give Kobe Football Bryant credit for his efforts. But overall, man, the Seattle Seahawks too, not just Kobe Football Bryant, but you got to give the Seattle Seahawks credit because they've dealt with some adversity this season dealing with injuries, but they found a way to keep themselves together. They stayed in the race. Because as we got to them, because remember, they started off 3-0, but then they hit a 3-game skid. They did beat the Falcons, but then they got blown out by the Bills. They narrowly lost to the Rams. And at that point, after that loss to the Rams, they were 4-5. We're thinking to ourselves, Seahawks might be one of the odd teams out. And this was just as the Cardinals were starting to build momentum. But then they beat the 49ers. Then they upset the Cardinals. The first time around was an upset. Then they beat the Jets. And then they beat the Cardinals again. All of a sudden now, Seattle Seahawks are doing solid for themselves. So I got to give that team props, man. They've really managed to turn things around after a 4-5 start. It's crazy. They went 3-0, then 4-5, but now they managed to turn it around. So Seattle Seahawks, through the roller coaster season, are now on top of the NFC West. But I think the big challenge for them, obviously, in that division will be the Los Angeles Rams. That's the only team that I see that could potentially snag that NFC West. It's because the Rams are that team. It always seems like ever post Super Bowl when you had the first season they got wrecked and they only won 4 games. But the last 2 seasons, you've seen a trend with the Rams. They struggle early in the season. People count them out. Then they rally back in December to try to make a playoff push. And I think for the Rams, considering they defeated the Buffalo Bills in a shootout, you got to consider the Rams potential favorites to win that NFC West and overtake the Seattle Seahawks. Because you just had ourselves a phenomenal game between the Rams and the Bills, and the Rams won at home as underdogs. So we got to give them props, man. Kyren Williams had himself a solid game on the ground. Puka Nacua had 12 receptions, 162 yards, and a touchdown. And, oh, man, now that I think about it, it's going to be a tough race to determine who's going to be the NFC Offensive Player of the Week between Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, and Puka Nacua. I could even put that up as a poll question. And now that I think about it, I'm going to do that on my community tab immediately following the stream. Because those 3 guys put up a great case for Offensive Player of the Week. And this whole, in the Rams, to their credit, they went into a game, they were underdogs. They got the win. They're 7-6. They're still only a game back in the division. And they already beat the Seahawks the first time. Now they still got to play them again coming up. See when that game is real quick. I'm going to look at the Rams schedule and see when that game is. Because we know they got the Seahawks again. They get the Seahawks the last week of the regular season. At that point, both teams could be right on point. They could have the same record and be on point to possibly win that division. So the Rams, I got to give them props. They're a resilient team. No matter what you throw at them, they're always going to give it their all. They're always going to fight. And they're hungry. I got to respect that out of the Rams. Even though they're not the most talented team in the world, they don't have the best roster. They play with a ton of heart and they're hungry and they're determined. I got to respect that out of the Rams. And that's nothing you can sleep on when it comes to an NFL team. So I give Coach McVay credit. He's making the most of what he has. We know since they went all in for the Super Bowl run a few years back, they haven't had the same pieces on their roster to make another run. But, hey, that's what happens when you go Super Bowl or bust. The price of going all in is the long term. But even after that, the Rams are still a top team in the NFC. And Coach McVay has that team fighting. They're 7-6 a game back. And they still could win that division. I got to respect the Rams and what they're doing. But now everyone wants to ask the question, is Josh Allen still an MVP frontrunner? And the answer is, hell yes, he still is. Yes, they may have lost the game to the Rams, but the way they lost in a high-scoring game, 44-42, when you talk about offense, the Buffalo Bills still scored over 40 points in defeat. Josh Allen threw for 3 touchdowns. Yes, he still has a case to be MVP. Absolutely, 100%. Josh Allen is still an MVP frontrunner. Oh, wait. And he rushed for 3 touchdowns. He had 6 total touchdowns between passing and rushing. Josh Allen can easily be the AFC Offensive Player of the Week, even though his team fell short. Easily. 6 total touchdowns. Let me repeat that. Josh Allen has 6 total touchdowns. And when it comes to it, this game, this performance might win him the MVP over Saquon Barkley. It might. Josh Allen had a statistical legendary performance in defeat. Easily in my lifetime, the greatest statistical performance in a regular season game by a player on the losing team. So absolutely, he's still a front runner for MVP. And this performance, because remember, MVP is based on individual performance, might win him that award. Because if it weren't for Josh Allen's heroic performance, the Rams would have got blown out. That's absolutely value in a player. And not just this game, but you look throughout the season, Josh Allen has consistently dominated both the run and the passing game. This season, he's playing like a hybrid for all the millennials that grew up in the 2000s, kind of like a hybrid of Peyton Manning and Michael Vick between passing and running, like passing like Peyton, running like Michael Vick at times throughout the season. But seriously, man, that's why Buffalo is still considered a contender in the AFC. So shout out to Josh Allen for doing his thing. And great. It's awesome this week in the NFL. We got two excellent games this week. We got a great Thursday night matchup between the Lions and Packers. And we got a shootout on Sunday, an evening game between the Rams and the Bills. So that's great for the NFL. But with that being said, I think this will be the perfect segue for when I come back after taking a few minutes. We're going to talk about the winners and losers for week 14 from the NFL. So give me guys 1 minute. I'll be right back. We'll talk about the winners and losers. Alrighty, folks, ladies and gentlemen, I'm back after a short break. And then we're just going to continue right where we left off. We was talking about winners and losers we were talking about now now we're going to talk about winners and losers from week 14 of the NFL season. We're going to start with the biggest winners. The main winner for me this week was the league. The NFL was the biggest winner this week. I'll say it. They had two excellent high-scoring games this week. First, Thursday night between the Packers and Lions, and then Sunday evening between the Buffalo Bills and Los Angeles Rams. Just excellent for the end. Great for the league. They had those two great games, both in the same week. And that's great. And that's a huge win for the NFL in that one. Some of the other winners from this week now, talking about team-wise, I got to go with, even in defeat, the Green Bay Packers. Like I said earlier, they showed a valiant effort in their defeat. They showed they could still make an effort, make some noise, maybe win a game or two come playoff time. Then I go the Minnesota Vikings as well. They had it themselves, and great performance offensively. Sam Darnold had himself a career day. Aaron Jones had a solid day. Jordan Peterson and Justin Jefferson had good games. You could just give the Minnesota Vikings whole offense the NFC Offensive Player of the Week awards and cheat on that one. So they're a big winner too. The Los Angeles Rams, like we said, they're that team that just doesn't give up. They continue to find their way back into everything. And another one, I got to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers, because you're talking about a good possibility. And I'm going to go on this for a second because my team's got to play them next. And Steelers could be contenders again, because after the first loss to the Browns, we kind of deemed them frauds. But looking back, we kind of jumped to the gun there because they bounced back with 2 wins. Impressive win against the Bengals in a high-scoring game. And now they come back and had a much more lopsided victory over the Cleveland Browns. Pittsburgh Steelers definitely have resubmitted themselves as contenders. Grega John, hello. Hope you're having a great evening. Thanks for stopping by and showing your support for this Week 14 recap. Grega John's been a longtime supporter of my streams and a great supporter for the Hardcore Sports Network content creators. So shout out to Grega John for his loyalty to the network and showing up to the chat in each stream. So as always, thank you for your support. And you got, like I said, the Steelers now, we're looking at them as possible contenders again after that victory against the Cleveland Browns. We're just looking back, okay, that game in the snow where they lost, that was just a fluke. Hey, good teams have bad games, but the difference between good teams, mediocre teams, and bad teams is good teams, when they have their bad games, it's usually a one-off. They bounce right back, put it behind them, and make everyone forget about it. And the Steelers, to their credit, they made everyone forget about that first loss to the Browns now the way they've won 2 straight, especially the way they beat the Browns in this rematch. I got to consider them a winner. And you got, even with George Pickens out, the Steelers offense still managed to throw for 2 touchdowns. Granted, it was against the Browns, but the Steelers found a way to rally around it. Next man up. They didn't let one player being out stop them. And I got to give this team props. And that, looking at it as an Eagles fan, got to admit that is going to be a tough matchup against the Steelers. And if we can win that, we can certainly continue to submit our case as contenders in the NFC. So I'm looking forward to the challenge and the conquest as an Eagles fan. But the Steelers are definitely a winner. They got themselves a good team all around. Are they contenders? To me, I think this upcoming game against the Eagles, one of the Super Bowl favorites in the NFC, and the Christmas game against Kansas City, those 2 games will decide if the Steelers are really contenders. Based on the win-loss record and their performance against both teams, I feel that'll decide whether they're contenders. But other winners, the Seattle Seahawks, like I said, they're a scrappy team. They're bouncing back into contention. They're 8-5. And the Rams, like I said, that team that doesn't give up. They may not be the best team in the world, but they always fight. And they always put up a challenge. I got to respect that. And they could still possibly win that NFC West and beat the Seahawks Week 18 to win the division. There's another winner. I even got to consider the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, even though, they don't have the best record, they're not the best team, they still have found ways to win the last couple games. Easy games, but they found ways to win and keep their season alive. And with the Falcons' collapse, there's a chance that the Bucs could still win the NFC South in spite of it. Now, when it comes to the losers in this one, I got to go. Well, for starters, the Chicago Bears. Jesus Christ, like, it's an injury-riddled 49ers team. You put up competitive fights against your 3 division rivals, even in defeat. You at least put up a solid effort, a respectable effort in defeat. And now you go against an injury-riddled 49ers team and you don't stand a chance. That's a huge L for them. And this whole season's been for the Bears, a team that had contention to make the playoffs, and everyone was considering 7th seed wildcard contenders going into the season, are now at 4-9. Major F. That's a major L, especially the way they played against a struggling Niners team. Garbage. Falcons, big L. They were looking like they could possibly be dark horse contenders, but now they've lost 4 straight, and their defense, which was once hyped up to be a top defense, played abysmal against the Minnesota Vikings. That's definitely a major L for the Falcons. I mean, so much for the hype going into the season. I was going to say the Jets, but we picked on them enough. Other losers, I mean, I'm going to say the Chargers, because the Chargers just cannot win big games. No matter what they do, it's like always the big games. No matter the circumstances, no matter the opponent. Anytime you put the Chargers in a big game against the Ravens, Steelers, defending Super Bowl champ division rivals, Kansas City Chiefs, they cannot find ways to win. Lost on Monday night to the Cardinals. No matter what, they just cannot win big games. It's like, I feel bad for the Chargers, and I feel bad for their fans too, honestly. Jeez, even as an Eagles fan, I kind of feel bad for them. Seriously. Well, considering that one of my work buddies in the past couple of years is a Chargers fan, that's part of the reason I feel bad for their fans. But it's like, oh my gosh, how can you consistently find ways to lose big games over and over? You would think at some point, maybe once or twice, you just find a way to win a big game. You would think with all these games the Chargers had, prime time against the Ravens, the Steelers, you'd think they would have just found a way to maybe win 1 or 2 of those games. Maybe you got Kansas City twice. They always play close. Maybe you just find a way to win 1 of those 2 games. Yeah, so I got to consider them losers for that. Even though they're probably still going to make the playoffs, but now here's the thing. You're 8-5, tied with the Broncos for second. The Broncos could still move up to second place. Chargers could be third and possibly looking at the 7th seed. Possibly having played the Buffalo Bills or Pittsburgh Steelers. And considering their track record in big games, I don't trust the Chargers in come playoff time. So I got to consider that an L. I mean, I would consider the Cardinals losers. You were looking like you were finally having hope, and now you've dropped 3 straight games. When on paper, because the messed up part with the Cardinals is late in the season, it looked like you were getting an easier schedule, and you didn't. They survived the first part of the season, which was supposed to be the most difficult part, looking like they were in contention to win their division. Now in the part that was supposed to be the easiest, they're struggling. I'm just like, I don't trust him. I don't. But yeah, for that, I'll consider the Charger. But I consider them losers as well. And there is one more story I did want to point out. DeMarvion Overshawn, I'm hoping for a speedy recovery, man. Because he had a gruesome injury, a horrible injury in the Monday night Cowboys loss to the Bengals. Tore his ACL, MCL, and PCL. Just Dude, 3 separate tears in your leg. That's going to be a long road to recovery. And just as a human, you can't help but to feel sorry for the guy. You would have come back from that serious an injury. I mean, no matter who they play for, whether they're a Cowboys player, Giants player, Eagles player, whoever, you never want to wish for that type of injury upon anybody. So I'm wishing for I'm wishing that DeMavion Overshown makes a full recovery and it can at least use his feet and at least function in everyday life. If he could at least just return to a football field, that would be incredible. And he would deserve respect for that. But I'm just hoping that his leg makes a full recovery and he can still live a healthy life. So prayers up to Overshown because that's a brutal injury. And before we get going, we're going to take a quick look at the standings, NFL standings going into Week 15. And speaking of Week 15, well, it's still on my mind. I want to give you guys a heads up. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it's going to be Week 15 of the NFL Pick'ems. But this time, I'm not going to be alone. I'm going to be joined by special guest Cool Cat Connor. You know Cool Cat Connor, who's with the Hardcore Sports Network, Cool Cat Mitch podcast. Yes, that Cool Cat Connor, folks, will be with me for Week 15 and for the remainder of the season for Pick'ems. So make sure to tune in 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. I'll remind you guys via social media. You can check us out then. Well, now, before we go, let's take a look at the standings real quickly. You got Buffalo Bills 10-3, Dolphins 6-7. They're still in contention. Now, they did beat the Jets in overtime, but they still had to play a close game against a team that on paper they should have easily defeated. But yeah, remember, it is December where the Dolphins would still have to travel a few games into colder weather. They don't always fare well in that situation. So I'm not fully sold on that. You got the Jets and the Patriots, both 3-10. You got the AFC South. Texans still winning that division. They're looking like the default winners. Colts are still 6-7, but I just think they're going to finish like 8-9, 9-8 at best. You got Steelers. Ravens had their bye weeks. They had a week to recover. Bengals did get a win, but we know their defense still struggles to close games. They did manage to escape with a win against the Cowboys backups, but it is a win, but it's also a win, but it's not really a statement win or a win that gets me any confidence they're going to rebound. I would still think the Colts have a better shot, even though it's a long shot, than the Bengals at this point. And then you got like Kansas City still on top. Chargers and Broncos, probably going to be one of those teams second, the other third. And then the Raiders, they're done. Yeah, Eagles again win. Commanders had a bye to recuperate. Cowboys, they've had a tough season all season long. And then the Giants, of course, they're dead last. They're done. And they lost to the Saints in an ugly game. Now, NFC South, 7-6 Bucks, 6-7 Falcons, 5-8 Saints. Saints technically could still be in contention, but based off the way they played, does anyone think that team actually has a shot? Panthers, they played a little bit better, but they're still 3-10. Lions 12-1, Vikings 11-2, Packers 9-4, Bears done. Like I said, NFC West, Cardinals and 49ers looking middle of the pack to finish the season for the league. Not for the division, for the league. And then Seahawks and Rams looking like the favorites to possibly win the division. That's where we stand right there. So I've said everything I wanted to say. I've talked about the main storylines for the NFL Week 14. And then, but we also, with the Saints too, let me not forget, the Saints lost Derek Carr too, with an injury, which that's another thing with the Saints. This Derek Carr, between injuries and inconsistent play, he's really been a disappointment. I hate to say it. He seems like a likable guy, but he's been disappointing his whole career. And that's trends continued with the Saints. He gets injured again against the Giants. I mean, it's a shame for the guy that he struggles to stay healthy, but at the same time, like I always say, the best of it, the greatest asset a player can have in any sport is availability. And if they're not available, they're not really an asset. But Derek Carr, man, I mean, it's tough for him. It's tough for the Saints. But that's what happens when you go all in for a quarterback that had red flags. Because Carr, he had his upsides with the Raiders, but he also had his red flags. He's likely to miss the rest of the season. I mean, the Saints, they want to start thinking about a quarterback for the future. So now I believe I've said everything I was going to say for this week. So with that being said, to everyone that stopped by, Greg, John, Arku, Ryan, Philin, thanks for stopping by. I hope everyone that stopped by enjoyed this stream. If you haven't done so, drop a like. You can feel free to leave, if you're catching this on the replay, leave a comment in the comment section. So again, everyone, thanks for watching, whether you watched it live or via replay, for parts of it, the whole stream, or you skimmed through it. I hope you enjoyed it for the time you watched it, and I appreciate your support of my content. So with that being said, have a wonderful night or day, and until next time, it is your boy, Nicky Stees, going to sign off for you guys. Have a wonderful night or day, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.